Hello and welcome to the Female Founder Friday podcast with me, Lindsay White. I'm passionate about helping female entrepreneurs be great leaders, build high-performing teams, and create inspiring workplace cultures through innovative talent programs and practices. Because when people feel like they belong at work, they deliver their very best and businesses thrive. The Female Founder Friday podcast is all about connecting with the most incredible female entrepreneurs to talk about the journey to creating their own business, the mistakes they've made along the way, and how they view their own leadership. And I'm challenging all of my guests this season to take my leadership style quiz. And during each episode, we'll be digging into their leadership style and how it impacts the way they lead in their life and their business. If you're interested in learning more about your leadership style and want some of my top tips to help you lead more effectively, you can take the quiz right now. Just check out the show notes or head over to highvoltageleadership.ca and you can click on the button at the top of the page that says take the quiz. And you can share your results, connect with our guests, and join the conversation on Instagram by following me at highvoltleadership. My guest this week is Michelle Clayton. Michelle is the founder of Let Her Fly, where she helps female business owners like you and I build really beautiful brands. And she's been in the business for over 30 years and has truly seen the evolution of the branding, design, and communication world as the technology has changed. Like so many of us, Michelle's shift from the agency world to her own business really came out of her own personal experiences with motherhood, her own health challenges, and really refocusing on her values. I'm looking forward to sharing this conversation with you today. Michelle, thank you so much for being a part of the Female Founder Friday podcast. I'm really glad to have you as a guest. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Lindsay, for having me. I am so looking forward to talking with you today and seeing where this conversation goes.
Oh, it'll go in all sorts of beautiful directions, I'm sure. So, start off by telling us about your journey as a female founder.
As a female founder. So I will start with my journey actually started in the US. So I am born and raised in the United States. A lot of people don't know that about me. I lost my accent when I came. So they don't know that, but that is where I grew up. And my dad was a commercial photographer back in the day. So he worked with a lot of graphic designers and ad agencies and stuff. So he was the first one, I think, that put the bug in my ear of, Michelle, this is a career thing. Like you could actually do this because, I did all the art competitions and stuff in school. So I went to university and got my degree in graphic design. And I did the math recently, and that was almost 30 years ago now. So, because we're of that age, right, Lindsay?
We are.
So it was a long time ago, but what's been fun is, so I have stayed, I think I'm one of those rare unicorns that has actually used my degree and stayed in that industry my entire career. It's looked different at different times, and I've certainly been in different environments, but I've always been there. And it makes it really fun to look back and see the evolution of the industry itself, right? When you're in it all the time, it's like, wow, this has really changed over 30 years. It's very different than it was. And yet there's still a lot of it that is so the same, right? The principles are the same of design in general, right? Like what was true 30 years ago is still true today. It just shows up differently, really.
Yeah. I can imagine. I mean, the first thing that pops into my head is that the evolution of technology has played an enormous role in the evolution of design. Yes?
Yes. Yeah. When I was learning, we were doing most of it by hand.
Yeah.
And the first computer I ever worked on was no word of a lie, it was a 6-inch black and white Apple screen.
Yeah.
That's what we had in our computer lab. And there was one big color monitor that we could sign out, we could block off our time if we signed up for it.
Wow.
That's how much it's changed. Isn't that crazy?
That is so crazy. It made me think about, we actually had an Apple IIe at the house. My mom bought it. It was like the height of technology at the time. And I think if we still had it, it would be worth $1 gajillion, right?
Probably.
It really would be. I don't know what happened to it. It's so sad we didn't keep it. But it like when you really step back and think about it, I mean, that was the height of technology at the time.
Yep.
And wow, look at where we are today.
No kidding. But what it gave me that I mean, I appreciate my education regardless, but it gave you a different set of skills. I think like we had hand skills, like we were pasting stuff up literally by hand. And so it gave you a different sensibility of space and proportion and all of those. Like, I don't want to get into all the technical stuff of it, but when you're used to just being on a computer, you don't see things, I think, as well as maybe you do when you're actually, when you have to write the letters by hand, you pay a lot more attention to the spacing and stuff like that. So it's been interesting.
I love that observation, because that makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't have thought about it that way. I mean, I'm not a designer. I would be more on the other side, where I'm more of a writer, right? I have a liberal arts background and did a lot of paper, but you're right. There is something different about the processes that go into creating it with your own hands. Like that part is similar, as opposed to typing on a keyboard or clicking in an, right?
Right. And trusting the default software, right, to do the spacing properly or whatever. It's like, well, it's never right. You always have to tweak it. But do you know how to tweak it, right? If you haven't figured that out or learned that, then yeah. So I feel like I've got a huge advantage in that, to be honest.
Yeah. So just such a different way to look at it. So I mean, now you own your own practice, but how did you get to that? Like from the university days to now, what did that look like?
Yeah. So university days, and then I went straight into working in communications for a nonprofit. So I was a designer on their team there in the States. And then through that job, actually met this very handsome, very wonderful Canadian man who I then married. And then he brought me up here to the frozen north. And I haven't really been warm in the last 27 years, I think, although it's beautiful here today, so I shouldn't complain. But and then I obviously was trying to find work in Canada, here in Calgary, where we both actually live in the same place. And it was interesting. So I was always like, I wasn't out of, never out of work, but it was different places. Like I worked pre-press and I worked in-house and things like that. And the interesting thing was I would go for, an interview for a design job, like at an advertising agency was ideally where I wanted to be. Right. But not being from here, my portfolio, and like this is back in the day where you have an actual physical portfolio, with the papers in it and all that stuff. Like we're old school, man. It didn't look like everybody else's. So everyone that came out of the local schools, they knew what to expect, like what kind of projects would be in there and all that. And mine didn't look like that. And they really didn't know what to do with me. Like some of them told me that. And I'm thinking, but this is a creative job. Don't you want something that's different from everybody else? It was really kind of odd to me.
Yes.
Certainly not something that I would have predicted would have been an issue. But then I did end up in an agency. I was there for years. It kind of went through merger and acquisition. And that was a great career. I had the best bosses, mostly men. So I worked under great men and a couple of women. They really allowed us to step up, and we got to meet with clients and we got to stretch our skills and step into senior roles. So I was so grateful for that experience, and my colleagues, of course, were amazing. Those were really good years. And then we had children. So I have 2 teen daughters now, and I knew that I didn't want to go back to the corporate space. We have no extended family in town at all. And that certainly weighed into it. My husband also traveled a lot for work. That was part of his job. And so I just couldn't see how I was going to go back to a 9-to-5 thing. And I really didn't want to. Right. And I was freelancing, like all along the way. I would freelance and I would do stuff on the side. And I kept doing a little bit of that. But the focus really became the kids. And also we were building and renovating lots of houses. We flipped a bunch of houses. That's a whole, job, full-time job in and of itself.
Yes, it is.
So it's like, I don't have capacity to take on anything else or to work somewhere else. And also in hindsight, I look back and I probably had undiagnosed postpartum depression after the kids. So, just all of that kind of stuff. And I know I had undiagnosed celiac disease at the time.
Oh my.
So I was exhausted all the time. Right?
I can't even imagine two little kids flipping houses and moving.
I
Because
know.
like that, those two together, like that's insanity.
Yeah.
And I know how celiac can impact people.
For me, it was just utter exhaustion.
Oh, wow.
Like 3-hour daily naps. But then once they diagnosed it and everything got under control, I'm like, oh, I feel like a new woman. Like
Yeah.
now we're good. Now we're good. So then as the kids got older, we were more settled home-wise. And so about 6 years ago, just over 6 years ago, I started what is now Let Her Fly.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting to me. You get past the young years of kids and going on school field trips and all that, and they're older, and like I felt like I had my time back to myself.
Yeah.
And started going, well, what do I want to do with this? And I can go back to what I did before, still not in a corporate space, but using the skills that I had and the things that I love to do. And so that's what I decided to do. And I think, what's the term you use? An accidental entrepreneur or unintentional entrepreneur?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, that was me too.
Yes. Yes. I never really intended to start my own practice. And yet here I am like 4.5 years later. Right.
Yeah. Same. I never thought I would be a business owner. I don't know how I thought that was all going to play out, but
right.
Yeah. So here we are, right? You and me.
Oh,
and so many others.
I love that. And I think, your story, every female founder I talk to, the story is unique. But what I find is always the same is that there's some kind of inflection point. There's a moment, there's a choice. For many of us, it is children and family, right? Where we choose a different lifestyle and a different way to work. And that brings us to the place where we choose to start our own businesses. Yeah. Because not only is the right choice for us, but sometimes for our family. I mean, sometimes, like for me, it was, I worked for a really terrible boss, and that the choice just became no choice at all.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm not working for that person any longer. That's crazy. But yeah. I love that. I love that this is just such a beautiful, rich journey that now has resulted in clearly a business that's very fulfilling for you.
It is. And, because design can go into lots of different directions, right? And when I created what is now Let Her Fly, what became obvious to me is my background in the ad agency world and that corporate space. I was looking at, so 10 years ago, probably even 8 years ago, this is what I kind of meant by the evolution of the industry. When you're in it for so long, branding was a thing for like big companies, right? When you've got a big budget and a big team and a crazy long timeline, that's who gets branding. But the irony is that it's the same principles, it's the same processes for like your business and my business, like for small business, for entrepreneurs. But if you don't know that, you don't know how to carry the one into the other. Right. So I just feel really blessed that I had that experience. And like, we need to be doing, like, don't be sending someone to go make a Pinterest board, or try a new font from Creative Market, that one that everybody else is using that you see on social media, right? Like, we need to take those same, like, that's where the strategy comes in. You can take the same principles that any big company uses and apply them to your own business, and you get such a better result, and it brings a much stronger transformation in the business.
Yeah.
So I was really intentional that that's what I wanted to bring. So I mean, I could do all kinds of graphic design, but that's where the branding piece came in for me, that small businesses need this too. And, they have every right to have that as well. So let's get more intentional about this and help those businesses succeed instead of just, slapping a new logo on a company and calling it done.
Yeah. And I think that's something that I learned as I sort of developed my brand for high voltage leadership is that, it's not just a logo. There's something very strategic behind it. And it really brings together a number of things, including the design.
Right.
With great purpose. And that's what makes it really impactful, not just some pretty colors and a few graphics,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
way more than that.
Yeah. It's that purpose piece, like you said.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
it. Well, and I try and do the same thing in a different way, which is bringing that big corporate people strategy and
Yes.
bringing that to a small business level, right? Because it's
Yep.
the same idea, same principles, that it doesn't have to be complicated.
Mm-hmm.
You can, but you can still leverage the same sort of underlying beliefs and pieces to
Yeah.
really make actually a really big impact in a small business, and with a smaller team. You don't have to have the hundreds and thousands of people. So I
Exactly.
really connect to that idea that you can take some of the big corporate pieces, just scale them for a smaller organization, but they'll make a really big splash
Yeah.
if you
Yeah,
do.
they really do.
So I love that. Okay. I want to ask you about, sort of where you've made mistakes or missteps
Mm-hmm.
in this process and what you've learned from those, Michelle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as we were joking before, like mistakes, who makes mistakes?
Uh,
Yeah, there's been lots of them, I'm sure. There's two that come to mind. One is one that is so common among all your guests, so I'll save that one for the second one.
okay.
But the first one, I think, looking back, and of course, we only know what we know at the time,
Yeah.
and hindsight's always 2020 and all the cliches, but looking back for me, when I stepped out of corporate, to stay home, I did not continue to nurture those relationships, those connections.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. And I think that really slowed me down at the beginning, because in a lot of ways it was like starting from scratch.
Right.
And I truly didn't feel like I had the capacity to do anything differently, but had I been able to maintain some of those key relationships and friendships and all of that when I was ready to start back up again, I think it probably would have either made things move quicker or easier, or I don't know, who knows, right? Who knows how that would have affected it, but I think there would have been a different factor at play there.
100%. So to be fair, just reflecting on what you've told us in your journey, it sounds like you had a lot going on.
Yeah.
Networking was probably low on the list of things to get done.
For sure.
But you know what? I think that's actually a beautiful learning, is that nurturing your network is always time well spent, energy
Yes.
well used.
Yes.
Whether you desire to stay in a corporate role forever and ever, that you're one of those people, that is super cool. Nurturing your network, because you never know where the next opportunity, the next job, the next promotion might come from, or whether, like you and I, where we've gone, to start our own businesses, how and who in that network can really help support, generate referrals, generate conversations, generate ideas. I mean, I get the best ideas sometimes through my networking conversations.
Yeah. It is so easy to think of, I needed those relationships because I needed clients. And I mean, for those kinds of people, it wasn't the clients at all, right? Like you mentioned, it's so many other roles that people play in our life and in our business, and it's all valuable. It's all valuable.
I really, that is such a great point and such a great learning. Okay. So number 2, you said this is something you have in common with some of my other guests. I'm interested to hear this.
Maybe all of your other, I'm not sure how many, but a lot of your other guests, yes, is not hiring sooner.
Yeah.
Right. That is the thing that I think would have changed things differently. But I will add to that, it's really important to know what you're hiring for.
Oh my God.
Right.
So said that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like at the point, if I had hired sooner, I didn't even know what I needed to hire for. Like I had heard people in the online space saying, you need to hire, don't wait too long to hire. Well, what does that even mean? And what kind of role am I filling? And where can I, plug some of these holes? Because I think for us as solopreneurs, we often struggle with that feast or famine cycle, right?
Yes.
Like that's a common thing. You've got the clients, you serve the clients because that's what we like to do. That's our jam. That's what we're good at. But we're wearing all the hats, and that's really hard to do without, burning the midnight oil. So you serve the clients, and what drops off is the marketing.
Yeah.
right? Whatever the marketing looks like for you. I don't use that as a bad word. It's, whether that's newsletters or speaking or whatever,
Yeah.
but we can't do it all. So we quit doing that. And then we finished serving the clients and oops, we didn't market. So there's nobody in the pipeline, right? So then we, you get the big engine turning again, you get some more clients, you serve the clients, you quit the marketing. Like that's where the feast or famine comes into play.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's so true. Wow.
yeah. So once you figure out, what I realized is I had to keep the marketing going somehow.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do it myself. I couldn't do it myself and still do really good client work. So I actually started logging my time for like 2 or 3 months. I think it was at least 2 months. It might've been 3. And I was like, I always logged my time anyway, because back from the corporate days, that's how you bill clients and all that.
Right. Right.
So I always had a good pulse on that, but I started logging all the business stuff, like writing the blog post, scheduling the social media, making graphics, all things that I was very capable of doing, but I didn't have the time. So once I could see, okay, here's all these pieces that I don't have to do. Someone else could do them just as well, if not better than me. And it's going to save me, I knew 20 hours a month, easy 20 hours a month. So if I can get someone else to fill that spot, why would I not do that? And as soon as I was able to do that, that's when I was able to kind of get out of the feast or famine. Now, it's always kind of got its head around the corner. I don't know if we're ever completely out of it, but it definitely cut down, fewer famine cycles and more feast cycles. And at the time too, I didn't know how to do it. Like I didn't know how to write a job description. And now I know you have an amazing resource for that, but I didn't know you back then, Lindsay.
Yeah, no, sorry. Yes, no, but okay. I am really glad that you said this. And I actually just did a post the other day that I'll link in the show notes.
Yeah, I saw that. About
this, because it is something that I hear all together too often. And the truth is, there's some mindset work. So I love the way you tackled that, Michelle, in that, wait a minute, I really need to think about my time differently and really analyze the time. And you are clearly very disciplined about that. I'm on the other side of that, where I don't log any of my time.
Yeah.
So I actually love that element of like, what am I doing for whom and how long, right? Like really getting clear on that. Actually, I think that adds, some data to the mix a bit, instead of it being anecdotal. But there is a mindset piece around the letting go. And that can be really challenging for some of us as solopreneurs. I just taught a workshop a couple weeks ago around really how do you go about hiring that rock star first person, whether it's an employee or a contractor. For many of us, it's going to live in that contractor space as our first person. But, we really have to get our own head around allowing someone else to have some of that responsibility in our business. And then there's some tactical pieces, you're right, around what do you need to do to really attract the right person, and to then know that they're the right person. What do you need to ask?
Right.
So that's the easy part. The tactical pieces are the easy part. It's get your own head in the right space. To be able to delegate and to be able to communicate and lead that person. Because whether they're a contractor or an employee, you got to tell them what's in your head. They're not going. There are no mind readers, right?
No, there aren't. And it's all that other stuff. Like you talk about this, I know, is like, what are the values of your business, right? Like so you got to do the work, right? You can't just slap up a job description and hire somebody. What's the saying? Hire slow, fire fast, right? You need to give yourself time to find the right person, and like even pre-onboarding, but then you've got the onboarding phase. So when you're in a crisis in your business, that's a really hard time to hire somebody great.
It really is. And that's why I sort of preach, like there is a time to be doing this. And when you are running around like a chicken with your head cut off and your hair on fire, that is not the time. Do that work in advance. Anticipate. Believe in your business enough to know that the growth is possible.
Yeah, that's key. I think that's the hard thing, right? It's like, what if I don't have the money to pay them? And what if I hire them and then things die off? And yeah, you do. There's a belief piece to it that we're going to make this work.
Yes. But
and it doesn't have to be huge either. Like, I mean, I hired someone for 20 hours a month. Like my assistant was 20 hours a month.
It's 5 hours a week. Like that's not a ton of dough.
No, it's not. But it was huge for me to get that stuff off of my plate.
And what I ask business owners is, what does that 5 hours a week mean to you? Like what business can you generate in 5 hours a week? Right? So if you are billing out at a couple $100 an hour and you're writing a blog post or you're scheduling your social, what's of greater value to your business? Well, clearly doing the client work or building those relationships, that's way greater value, because all you need is one new client for 1 month and you've got 4 or 5 months of an assistant paid for.
Exactly.
Right. And it's really believing in your own ability. That's what sort of lives underneath all of that is, I'm really scared. Right. This is really hard. And so when I work with female founders, small business owners to really talk through that, that's what I find is sort of underneath all of it. Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah. And you mentioned too, the perfectionism thing. Like my name is Michelle and I'm a perfectionist. Right? Like
both are our hand up.
You're right. I don't know if you're an Enneagram person. I'm an Enneagram 1. So that's like perfectionist all over. And it is hard to let go of that stuff, but you can do it incrementally too. It's not like you just hand things off and you never look at it again, right? Like there's learning time, there's onboarding time, there's checks and balances. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's going to be okay. And you know what? If a few social posts go out that aren't exactly what you want, there's an opportunity to communicate and iterate. Yeah. Right. And
I found that too. And it's been like personal growth for me to see something not go out perfectly, or like we had a big flub up with our email system, not our fault. My assistant did what our email system told her to do. It sent an email to everybody immediately. I'm like, you know what? Nobody's dying here. No. It's okay. And everybody's done it. Yeah. I've gotten emails like that before. I've seen mistakes. I've seen typos. Like, do I think they're a terrible business owner? No.
Oh, I think they're a human being.
We're human.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I thank you for saying that. Like, let's put this in perspective. Nuclear war is not going to start because your MailChimp app sent something out 3 hours early or 2 hours late, because I've had that too. Sent a newsletter last month, 3 hours after I had already done the workshop.
Oh no.
Now, the good news is it was recorded. People can still go find it, but I was like, oh no. But like the world is literally not going to collapse.
No. And people are way more gracious and kind than we think they are. I'm like, if someone's going to unsubscribe because of that, they're not my people anyway.
No, bye-bye. Right? Bye-bye.
And I even had the thought in my head of, okay, do I send an apology email now because of that one? But I'm like, then they're just going to get another email. What's the point of that?
Yeah.
I mean, let it go.
And have a sense of humor about it. And again, that's where our personal leadership style, and we're going to talk about yours in a moment, but we can really step into our leadership as a business owner and say to our team, whatever they look like, hey, let's talk about what happened here and what we can do with our process, our systems, the way we communicate, so that doesn't happen again. Right. That's where we can really step up. So I love it. I think it is a point that a lot of my guests make is I should have hired sooner. I drove myself to the brink of insanity and then decided I needed some help. Yeah. I wouldn't do that again. So if you're listening, don't do that. Stop it. Do that. If you feel like you're going bonkers and you need to hire somebody, just call me and I'll help you figure it out. We can get you there.
Yes.
We're going to talk now about Michelle's leadership style because she's taken my leadership style quiz. And if
Wow.
you haven't had a chance to take the quiz yet, you want to follow along, you want to know if your style is the same as Michelle's. The link is in the show notes, or you can go to highvoltageleadership.ca. There's a button right at the top that says take the quiz. Hit that button. You can do the quiz in what, like 2 minutes or less, Michelle? It's
Yeah,
not.
I think it was less than 2 minutes. Yeah.
It'll give you something to think about, a little self-reflection. I've got some great tips on leadership there for you. Michelle, what did you get out of that survey? What was your style?
My style, which I laughed and was not surprised, my style is coaching, which is funny to me because I am not a coach. Like, I am not a certified coach in any way, shape, or form. But over the last, 5 or 6 years, I am surrounded by so many coaches. I know a lot of y'all.
I love it.
Of all types, leadership, business, personal, weight loss, friends, colleagues, people in my network, and clients. I have a lot of clients who are coaches of various shapes and sizes. And a few of them have told me, they're like, Michelle, you're really like a coach. I'm like, I'm not a coach. I'm not a coach because I'm not a certified coach, but my style is very much like that. And I think, in the way that people that you surround yourself with rub off on you, hopefully for better.
Sure.
Being around those people and learning from them, like asking good questions, asking thoughtful questions, really listening to their answers. That is very much my style of life, I hope too, but especially in business.
Yeah.
Even in something like design. It's kind of funny, but yeah, it is.
No, I can really see where, and you nailed it. I mean, those are the two fundamental skill sets you need as a coach. You need to be able to listen and actually listen for what's not being said. That's what makes a really powerful coach. And ask really great questions and ask why all the time. Those are the two big skill sets of being a coach. And I can actually really see how that would be of great value in design and branding to really get in your client's head.
Yeah, it's huge. It's such an advantage. I remember, I think that some of the first coaches I knew personally as friends, I was in a mastermind group and there were 4 of us, 3 of them were coaches of different types and me. And so I asked them, like, okay, explain this to me. Like, what is the difference between a coach and a therapist, or a coach and something else? So that was where I started to learn, oh, so like this is a thing, this is how this works. But yeah, in branding, the thing that people tell me the most, like as clients, the feedback that's most common is, I felt so seen and heard.
Yeah.
When I worked with you, like, you really understood me and you really understood my business. I'm like, that is one of the greatest compliments I think I could get. That to hold space for somebody else, because you're same as you, like, we're in people's businesses, right? Like, they're divulging really personal things.
Yes.
And to be able to provide a safe space where they can do that and ask the deeper questions and really kind of get under the hood, it's so important. And for me, that's what creates a better result for them, as opposed to like just making a new logo, right? When you can really capture that part of who they are and who their people are and how they want to show up and how they want to be perceived. Like, there's a gold mine of information in there if you're willing to go for it. Yeah. I love it.
I do love it. And I think one of the things that you really highlighted in there, and I think it's important as a leader, is actually to get really curious. Put your own preconceptions, put your own ego aside, put what you think you know over there and park it.
Yeah.
And just get deeply curious about people, what they think, how they feel, what perspective they have. Like, just get curious. And then, as my mother would say, use your mouth and your ears in the proportion God gave them to you.
Exactly.
So shut your cake hole, open your ears.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what people will offer to you.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Like, it's such a gift, really.
It is a gift.
And I mean, and isn't that what we all want, right? We all want to be seen and heard and supported and understood.
Yes.
Yeah, it's what we all want. So to be able to do that in our work, I'm like, I get to do this all the time. How great is that?
I am always deeply honored. I was just coaching with a new client this morning, and I am always deeply honored that people invest in the space, right? They allow me in, and they invest in that, in what we create together. And that to me is the ultimate. They're giving of themselves.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think whether it's in our own business or whether we're leading a team, everyone wants to feel seen and heard and respected. And I would add to that, like they belong. And that's what you create, Michelle, for your clients, is a sense of belonging. That's what I help business owners create in their team, is a sense of belonging. When we feel that level of connection and safety, we can show up as our whole self. We can do really great work. We can create with someone like Michelle. We can have a beautiful, inspired culture where people just, magic happens.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we really do. That's what we all really want in our heart of hearts. And so I think that's really beautiful that that is what you bring to your clients and to that space of design and creation. I can imagine the beautiful things you produce in that space.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very fun. The other thing with that too that I would add is when you do that, the way that we invest in our clients, it never goes unnoticed, right? And it never goes unappreciated.
No, I think you're right.
And it always comes back, right?
Yeah.
Without intending, like that's not the intention of it, right? I don't do it to get something out of it, but it just does. Like they remember that. And there's the, how can I support you? What do you need? It builds this beautiful network of people. It's not just a client boss, whatever relationship. It builds this connection space.
It's true. And I mean, for us as business owners, you're right. It generates clients and referrals because our clients want to tell others about what we do for them. I think it also, in organizations, when you have happy team, when the people that work in your business feel seen, heard, respected, and like they belong, they do great work for your clients. And when they do great work for your clients bring more work. They give you more money, right? Yeah. And they go out and are happy to tell the world, hey, I work with this organization and they are incredible.
Yep.
So it just self-perpetuates. And beyond that, it's the karma piece, right? When you put that stuff out to the universe, you get that back tenfold. So I really love that. Michelle, we need to spend more time together. That's what I think about this entire conversation. You and
we actually get to have coffee in person somewhere, right?
Yes. And now that we can do that, because we clearly have we don't do the same work, but our philosophy, our approach is the same. And it's always exciting for me to have someone like you in my network. So thank you. I really appreciate your time. Appreciate you being a guest. You've brought some really beautiful, insightful, magical things to the conversation today. And I'm so excited for anyone who gets to listen to this episode.
Yeah, you're so welcome, Lindsay. Thank you for having me. It was all my pleasure.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for tuning in today. I sure hope you enjoyed listening as much as I did hosting this conversation. And if you did enjoy today's episode, would you do me a favor? Would you give the episode a 5-star review and share it with all of your friends? I would really appreciate that. I've got a goal to impact 1,000 female founders, and with your help, we can really amplify this message. Thanks again for being a part of the show, and don't forget to connect with me and all of my guests on Instagram at High Volt Leadership. We'll see you next Friday.